I don't remember where I read it or who wrote the book, but in one of the 19th century books on strategy I read, the author points out, again, this is 19th century, that all the best generals play chess, but none of the best chess players are generals. And that's kind of a important point when thinking about things like combat and fighting and all that. A chess master basically can fight another chess master, but to specialize in chess would exclude anything that a general has to, practice and study. They have to study ancient battles, logistics, the enemy, potential enemies, and all that. There's just too much for a general to, study, to concentrate enough to have a chance against someone that only works on his chess game. Simple reality. Now, I bring this up because, there's a lot of idiotic things on the internet, obviously. And recently I heard one that was pretty damn stupid. Somebody was saying, wrote that if you can't win a fight that has rules, you can't win a fight without rules. Really? Okay? Because I'm pretty sure this is against the rules he was thinking about. And if I had a chance to bet on, someone with a knife against someone without a knife, I'd bet on the guy with the knife. Now, I'm sure that there's a few people out there immediately thinking, like, oh, it takes a weapon for them to defeat me. Okay, let me get back to that and just do a little explaining ahead of time. There really is two sorts of violence: social violence and criminal violence. Now, social violence is the stuff that we boys did back in the schoolyard. I mean, we've tried to figure out who was the biggest man, all that. It goes back to like when we were wandering the plains of Africa. There was the tribe. And yes, there are unwritten rules to these types of fights. You don't cripple someone, you don't kill someone, you don't use a weapon. It's one-on-one. The loser can still help the tribe. He's not a burden to the tribe by his injuries. And, it still goes on, and it usually starts off with, what are you looking at, or whatever. Most people, most men grow out of it by the time that they're about age 25, 30-ish, thereabouts. Some don't. Few women do it, but, it's not totally, impossible for that to happen. But yeah, that's social violence. And it's typically done in front of witnesses, for the stature, establishing dominance. Criminal violence, of course, is usually, they try to do it without witnesses, and it's the type of thing that supposedly we are talking about when we're talking about self-defense. In most social violence situations, you do have an opportunity to walk away. It's just that we've been programmed to think that we won't have a chance to pass on our DNA if we do. And just as an aside, women seem to have evolved more than men, because if you fight over a woman, chances are she's not going to be pleased. The exception to that rule, the ones that like being fought over and might even get you into fights, the technical name for those are poisonous fuck bunnies, and I advise avoiding them at all possible. But criminal violence is like the case of, you close the door to your car in your driveway, you turn around and you see the crazy ex-boyfriend of your current girlfriend coming at you, and there's a glint in his hand. Yes, okay, that's criminal violence. That's something that is forced upon you. You don't have a chance to walk away. And the criminal will not play by rules. Okay, and that seems logical, but there's this unspoken assumption that people who do a lot of unarmed fighting, for sparring and competitions, that everyone else will follow those same ideas. I've heard some quotes. One guy was being dropped off in a bad part of the neighborhood, the city, and asks, would he be okay? And he says, what do you mean? I do MMA. Again, unconscious assumption that other people are going to fight him the way that he is used to fighting and has trained so much in. Another one that's really kind of silly. There's a meme that runs around. I run across it every 2-3 times a year. Some guy there, and he's like this, and he's got the whole Keiko gi on. He's going like, something along the lines of, "I am no longer afraid of any man. Jiu-jitsu has made me that way." And you should be scared of someone with a knife, okay? This is what you will run into on the street. Again, if your competition follows mainly the rules of what we do when we do the Candice Mas Macho thing back in grade school, and a lot of people think that they're doing self-defense when they have perfectly good, ability to walk away. The other person will walk away, they'll laugh at them. Some people can't do that. I mean, when you're my age and you've done all the things I have, you really don't have to prove yourself anymore. But there's a lot of people out there that, just, they have to prove that they are the man. And yeah, unfortunately, a lot of them get killed. Now, again, we're talking about weapons here, among other things. I know some people right there are going to basically be saying, that, well, if they got a knife, I would do something different. Okay. If they say something like, if there's a knife, I will run away. Well, first of all, if there's no knife and you don't run away, you're really not doing self-defense. Again, if you've got a chance to get out of there, but you don't, and you choose to fight, that's not self-defense. That is basically probably you insecure about your penis size. Put it right there. Secondly, okay, so you've just admitted that basically you are training yourself to fight whenever there's an opportunity, rather than training yourself to get the hell out of there, talk your way out of it, run if you need to. You are training yourself to fight someone rather than do what you should do in self-defense and get out of there. Because in self-defense, typically getting home unharmed is the objective, right? And if you're running, fine. A woman being pulled into a van, again, if she's got a pencil and can drive it into the eye of the person dragging her van, that's valid. It's not dirty fighting; it's survival. But the guy that basically says well, I don't know if I'm going to need self-defense, but what if somebody slaps on my wife's ass? Yeah, okay. Some guy basically once said, I'm training you for when your life is on the line, not so you can be an asshole in the pub. And yeah, unfortunately, that's the situation. Now, the second point about if they have a knife, I'll do something else. I'll put a link into an article about this, but there was a guy named Darren Lauer who put together a little test. And so he got 85 police officers, and they got into the combative suits. I think it was Red Man, and all that. And they went at it in a scenario, bang, bang, bang. At one point, the attacker jumps back, pulls out a simulated knife, with chalk dust on the ends, brings it up to here so it's in the line of sight of the officer, not down concealed. And he says, I'm going to stick you, pig. Or I'm going to kill you, pig. And then he goes in attacking with the simulated knife. Now, out of the 85 officers, how many do you think? These are officers that are a little bit more aware of the fact that they might be stabbed than your typical person. Out of those 85, how many were then able to react to the knife as a knife? 3. 3 officers were able to react right then after the knife was shown to them as if it was a knife attack. An additional 10 realized as they were being stabbed in the simulation that they were being attacked by a knife. The remaining 72 officers, police officers, despite how obvious the attacker tried to make it, did not realize there was a knife involved until after the scenario had stopped and they looked down and saw all the chalk marks on their training outfit. So you're going to tell me that you're going to be able to see a knife? There's plenty of cases out there of people that, if you know what you're doing, or even know a little, and you really want to kill this person, they can conceal it until it's sticking out of your chest. Okay, that's the point. No pun intended. And yeah, there's case after case of people starting fights and ended up dead by knife wounds that they didn't see. It's kind of a case where you feel you don't. It's hard to feel sympathy for these guys when you find out how many people do things like MMA for the purpose of basically being able to dominate other people. Like, yeah, they'll slap somebody's girlfriend's ass. What are they going to do about it? Well, if it's a fight and it's the social violence type of rules, they've got an advantage because it's the same thing that they train, and they're exclusively train on these types of things. No eye strikes, no throat strikes, no fear of weapons. They do that and all that until they run across somebody that won't play by the rules, and they end up dead. Go ahead, do a web search. You'll find names of people that have, MMA champions. Do the search, and you'll find case after case after case. And the strange thing is, if you look up like judo teacher killed by knife attack, or aikido teacher killed by knife attack, they're damn rare. Okay, just like MMA and kickboxing and all these competitive sports type things, they're the ones that end up getting dead for some reason. So you want an example, okay? I know a guy that is a professional witness in many cases self-defense, and he worked one for a guy who was killed, named Dalton Robert Rose. And it's pretty much certain that in this case, Dalton Rose was the aggressor. The guy that, the other guy basically did something to a woman, said something that, wasn't kosher. Dalton then hunts this guy down, ambushes him, hits him to the ground, and as far as we're able to tell, he tosses this guy to the ground, and then he goes in for a ground and pound. The guy on the ground basically had a knife, and Dalton Rose seems to have impaled himself on it. The only other explanation that was presented in court basically had the guy that, with the knife, who had more chemicals in his system than a metropolitan river, was able to do a jumping, spinning back knife strike. More likely that all he did was basically, stuck the knife up, and Dalton Rose jumped on it, killing himself. He never saw the knife, probably, started the fight, and he's passed away. You can look his name up, Dalton Robert Rose. Strangely enough, if you look up Dalton Robert Rose MMA, they won't mention he died by a knife fight. If you find like his funeral information, they don't mention that he did MMA. So it's kind of, there's that. But yeah, people seem to do a lot of dying, if you do mixed martial arts and a lot of competition sports, and think that you're going to face only that situation. So, this whole idea that, because you get into a ring and, you win, that you've proven that your art is effective for self-defense is illogical. I mean, it's like saying that because you can beat every other person in chess, you're a great general. Yeah, there's just, you can concentrate on that, and if you ever get into a situation where it's not a case of attacker and defender, but rather asshole number one and asshole number two, and going at it, and you both fight on social violence, which happens a lot more than actual self-defense, then you'll probably be okay, up until the point where you don't, and you end up getting stabbed. This is a worry. You cannot really, again, people say that they have gotten in the ring and proven that their stuff is, effective for self-defense. No, that's basically a game of chess for generals. There's so many things that, again, there's only one person, he doesn't even have a shirt on. No weapons, no friends, no ambush. Okay, and you just can't say that that covers everything. And then how do you prove something? How do you set up the test? I've had Rory Miller on the podcast, and he used to work in corrections. And, well, he had a coworker that did judo. And, if you talk to MMA guys, they say that the hip throws from judo don't work. You don't see them in the octagon because they don't work. And, you don't see them in the octagon. But this guy that, knew Rory, it was, the hip throws were the most common things he used to defend himself because he kept getting attacked from behind. The criminals would not step up, say, hey, I'm about ready to attack you. They'd wait till this guy's back was turned and then jump him. And the setup for the hip throw was right there. And as soon as the guy hit the ground, he had a chance to react and do something else. So which do you believe? The guys that get in the octagon and say that, they can't make hip throws work, or the guy that has actually done it against convicted felons trying to their best to do as much harm as possible to him? No situation, no training is actual combat except for combat. And if you're doing a training situation where nobody's getting injured, nobody's getting, crippled, that's not really a simulation of reality. Another case, I know a couple guys, and they worked with a third person. I never met him, but they talked about him. His name was they called him the Amazing Eagle. And he was a bouncer in a very rough bar things. And he did Aikido. And according to this guy was fantastic. I mean, he not only could he talk people down more than most people could, but whenever somebody swung at him, he was able to deal with it. Because as it turns out, an enraged biker with a lot of alcohol in him that is, mad at the bouncer for telling him that he's been cut off, they don't pop back and then start, doing all this. They throw what we call, a nighty-night bunny rabbit. They're trying to talk to you, get you to lower your guard, and then they throw everything behind that punch, fully committed. If it connects, it'll knock you across the room. And guess what? Aikido does fantastic for those type of attacks. What are you testing for? This is the question. If you set up the test so that it favors people, one person against another without a shirt and no ambush, like the judo case, it's going to be skewed results. Now, part of the problem, with these things, if these MMA guys that are so concentrated on competition were honest and said, okay, well, we're a sport. We're doing this for points. We're doing this for fun, because it is fun. But don't think of this as self-defense. If they were like that, I would be fine with it. But too many MMA folks are saying that this is self-defense, and it's good at what it does, but it's not self-defense. Okay, there's so many holes in it. And I want to point out, the guy that I was talking about, the strategist, he never said don't play chess. He just said don't concentrate so much on one little part of what you have to study that you ignore everything else. And yes, if you are going to be the best at competition, you really can't afford to do things that would get you, would help you survive on the streets. Eye attacks are very, very effective. Some people, will say that, well, no, they're not. And it's easy enough to get something like this. I did this with my students not so long ago, and just practice them and be on the receiving end and realize people can attack your eyes. I've seen situations in like combat shooting where, people have so trained themselves for competition with certain things off the table that they can't react to those attacks. And it's just outside their experience because they keep practicing it. Neck manipulation, striking to the side of the neck. People say, hey, these type of folks say, hey, we can do dirty tricks too. MMA guys can do dirty tricks too. Do they train in it? Is it ever part of their training? Does anyone ever try to like throat punch them or hit them in the back of the neck when they try to go for a takedown? It's outside of there. And again, if you practice these types of attacks or against these types of attacks, everything else being equal, for competition, the guy who spreads himself thinner is going to be a disadvantage to the guy that concentrates only on what goes on in the ring. And again, kind of like the chess analogy. And I really want to point out, not saying don't spar, but if you want to say that you are prove that you are better or prove that your art is superior to somebody else, that's a chess mindset, not the general mindset. That's it. Now, again, the Darren Laurel study, knives are a reality. Basically your chances of getting knifed to death in London seem to be higher than being shot to death in Manhattan. That's what I heard. I don't know if it's true, but again, there's a lot of knife attacks. And again, you're not going to see them coming if the guy knows anything. In general, if somebody shows you a knife, he wants something, okay? Occasionally, it's like he just wants to see the fear in your eye before he stabs you, but maybe he wants a wallet, or in the case of a female, maybe he's trying to take you to a second location to do something, which people say you should not let them. But yeah, if he really is, intent on doing you serious harm, he's not going to make this obvious, and it's going to be very easy if too much of your training is around unarmed in a competitive situation, you're going to miss this. It happens so many times with so many people that do a lot of sparring. And really, I got to point out that for self-defense, sparring is part of training. Competition, all training is geared towards sparring. That's just the way it is. But if you got a knife, if you're dealing with an art that acknowledges the realities of weapons and that there's a possibility that a knife is involved, it's totally different from what you're seeing in competition. Some people that have really drunk the Kool-Aid say, hey, if he's got a knife, you want to take him to the ground because then you can control the knife arm and all that. No. Just no. Go find somebody that knows a bit about the knife, find some safe way to simulate it, and then try it out for yourself. The thing is that, to punch, someone do damage, you need more, to be grounded and really have a good setup. A knife person can just this much and do fatal damage. It won't kill you immediately, most likely. A lot of people, just get stabbed, and if it's not taken care of immediately, well, they'll die. But small stabs can kill you. And the same power that would not even really sting you in a fist can kill you with a knife. Another thing about weapons-based arts, facing them, is that you tend to avoid things rather than commit. The whole thing of going to the ground and all that. Sometimes you do have to commit, but it's not the first option. Unlike, say, a sports situation where victory is making the other person submit or defeating him, so he can't go on. Again, some arts, like the one I practice, basically train you to run like hell. So, if the guy hits the ground, instead of going for a ground and pound, you basically get the hell out of there if you can. If there's not a situation like you're a security guard or a prison guard or something like that, why stick around? And that's it. Knives and such are a reality. And, again, are you training to defeat someone that is a trained fighter in a specialized situation? Or are you training to, survive and get home to your family? Sparring is one tool in the, toolbox. But if you concentrate too much on it, again, chess thing, the way that I sparred in Japan, basically, we didn't care who won, okay? And everyone trained against everyone else, which means that, I was in there 6 months in the dojo. I went up against a guy that's been training for 30 years. He beat me like a redheaded stepchild. But you learn more from your losses than from your victories. And after every session like that, we sat around and goes like, okay, this is what you did wrong, this is what you need to work on, you've got this type of a gap. It's a way of finding out problems with what you're doing. And of course, occasionally there was a situation where the teacher would basically step up and say, wait a minute, no, you wouldn't actually do that. You know, the other guy is being nice, but if you leave that open, you know, like this is what happened. And then like half strike, you know, half powered strike. It's like, oh, okay, I don't want him to do that for real. Stop it before these things become habits, before you leave something like your neck open to a counterattack, because that's not what you can do in competition safely. Again, there's other things, you know, like neck braces, you know, you practice striking them. Bob, you know, the bob thing, you know, you can actually practice doing that. There's nothing really that's, you know, this is combat, and there's a whole lot of things around here that you can do to help you get to here. But there's nothing but somebody coming at you with a knife, you know, or potentially having a knife is actually this, you know. So sparring, you know, is a tool. Don't make it the purpose. That's the whole thing. And, you know, again, I want to say again, you really can't prove that what your stuff does works, you know, in real situations. And, you know, I know guys that basically have sent more people to the ER than the NFL. And they know every time they go into a fight, you know, because they're a bouncer or whatever, that they might lose just because something that they've never encountered, or just bad day, or the guy's really, really good at something. There's no assurances. They know this. Every time they go in, there's no assurances. No matter how many fights they've been in, no matter how many things they have seen and tried, they know that they haven't proved that the next guy won't hand them their head. And on the other side, you know, like people that study my art that don't spar and instead like go for the 800 years of tradition as a safety blanket. Well, you know, this guy in my art, he used the art that I practice and survived, so now I know that this art is good, and you know, I can defend myself. I've encountered a few of those people in my art, and I gotta tell you, there are a lot of people in my art that, yeah, they can handle themselves, but the guys that say that sort of thing about, like, yeah, that guy studies my same art, he defended himself, this I can, no. I look at these people. I'm kind of called the Dr. House of the Bunjinkan, because I'll just sit back and say, no, you're doing. You know, were you even in the same room with the Japanese when they were teaching this stuff? Because that's idiotic. And yeah, it hasn't made me too many friends. But yeah, there's no way to say that what you do will work for you. Somebody else a generation ago or today could have used a technique that you practice on and gotten away with it, you know, took the guy down. Does not mean that you can do it, because your training might be somewhat unrealistic. You may not be pushing yourself. Again, everyone needs to worry about the next person. They can't sit on the laurels and say, I've proven this. There is a dream that if you do any type of self-defense or combat arts, you know, like if you're in the military, that you probably will, you know, encounter, and that is the undefeated enemy. I remember in basic training, you know, I had a dream where some guy's coming at me, and I keep shooting him, and he won't stop. I've had other dreams where, again, you know, like I'm hitting this guy in areas, and boom, and none of them faze him. It's your mind telling you that, yes, you know, Caesar, thou art mortal. And it doesn't matter, you know, it doesn't matter how many times you've fought somebody, or how many times, you know, how much training you have. You can't say, you know, I no longer fear any man, and this martial art has made me that way. No. Okay? Stay fearful. Keep looking. Keep challenging yourself. Try to find things that you don't know. Try finding flaws in yourself that you don't know about. This is what sparring is supposed to be for, not figuring out who is the better person. Okay? Sparring is a tool. It is not the end to itself if you're talking about self-defense. If you're talking about, you know, being a great sportsman, hey, I live in the city with the Olympic Training Center. You know, if that's your purpose, great. Just be honest about it and don't call it self-defense. Okay, I know at this point someone is dying to bring this up, and they're just, you know, oh, let me get a chance. And what they're going to say is that, well, maybe we're not exactly like actual combat, but we're the closest. So by being the best and at everyone else in this octagon type thing, we are proving that we are the best thing for practicing, martial arts for self-defense. Two things. First of all, no, you're wrong. You are that any situation like the competition that you see on TV. That's not the best simulation. In my opinion, the best simulation is basically where you get one or more people in, suits, heavy suits, to protect them, and then you do scenario trainings. You may talk to the person before attacking. That's usually the case, and that's usually the case on the street before somebody, will attack you because, whatever. You can use simulated weapons. You can have more than one person. I know of one situation that I saw that, again, somebody started a fight, boom, 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 and he basically took the guy in the armored suit to the ground, and then here comes Bernie with the tear. Blindsided him, which happens in reality. You can have certain scenarios like you've got to get through a door, behind these guys. Sometimes there's a possibility that you can talk your way out of a fight. All of these things are more realistic than two guys with no shirt on and gloves coming at each other. They both want to fight each other. This is not realistically self-defense. It's part of training. It might be a good training, one part. But yeah, if you really want something closer to real combat, you want simulated situations with heavy suits. But even that case, even these cases that I've done this training, but even that is no assurance that you'll be able to do something on the street. You might do great in all the scenarios and still get your head handed to you by some meth head with a knife. That's just reality. So yeah, that before you put it in the comment section, and just think that I am going to laugh at you. But yeah, if you're interested, go ahead, put something in the comments and hit the like button, subscribe if you want. Tell me cases of, or that you know of, what you think works well for helping, training, things. I mentioned these stuff like this that can help out people to enhance their training. And I'm going to come up with a second part of this with another aspect of self-defense. I'll see you then. Bye.